Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. Listen up, grandpas. Have you actually pulled the trigger on recording your life story? I'm talking video, baby. They want to remember your corny jokes, your crooked smile, your rugged good looks, and the jaunty bounce of your voice. What if I told you there was a really easy way to do this? Recently, I sat down and I told my life story on video. Not the whole thing, but the good stuff, the messy stuff, the funny stuff. The parts I didn't want to forget and the parts that I did not want my kids and my grandkids to forget. Planted Media made it so easy. They came to me, set up everything, and then they did some editing voodoo magic that made me look like $1 million. Go to plantedmediaco.com and tell them Rivers sent you, and you'll get a nice little Grandpa Channel discount. All right, back to the show. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. We have a delightful guest this morning, a good friend of mine of a bunch of years, Mike Deraedt. You'll find him refreshing and bracing, and I love Mike. Mike has a great heart, and Mike makes me laugh, and sometimes I make him laugh. But Mike has a really interesting background. Mike is from the mean streets of Detroit, and I always learn new phrases that come from his solid upbringing, and he's also a grandpa, but he's one of my very, very best friends. We're sort of an odd couple, aren't we?
Very odd.
But anyway, I just wanted to have you kind of paint a picture for me, to the extent that you want, of your life growing up in Detroit. And I just want to paint a picture for a lot of grandpas who've had some pretty rugged upbringings and life experiences, and how you can turn those into pluses rather than minuses. But tell me kind of a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I grew up on the what's called the Lower East Side. The reason is the southeast side along the Detroit River. You look across the river and there's Canada. And it's the old factory and warehouse section. But it was a very strong neighborhood, very immigrant. It was more like a village in a lot of respects because, so many people were from the old country. Mm-hmm. And that's why I have a hard time right now, people being such against immigration, because these are great people that, gave so much to this country. Guys I grew up with who were born overseas, went to Vietnam like I did and made sacrifices. And so it was good because I got a dose of so many cultures. And that, I didn't realize how lucky I was. There was the Greeks and just everything, the Italians, and never bothered you to hear people speaking foreign languages because, that was just normal.
It'd be highly unusual when I was growing up to hear somebody speaking a different language.
Not homogenous at all like Utah, but Utah has changed considerably since I've been here for so long.
And you've been the catalyst for that.
Yeah, right. When I came here, I think Chuck-a-Rama was considered fine dining.
It's Chuck-a-Rama is also one of I have two wonderful grandsons that consider it the height of swank.
Oh yeah, so definitely. I came here after I got out of the Army. I went to the Army when I was 19 years old, like a lot of guys, back in the 60s. But going back to Detroit, it was just a cornucopia of different things. Everybody had their own neighborhood, like the Italians would have their neighborhood. And it was very educational. It's nice. But when I was in the second grade, my dad died. Where it was just before my first communion, Catholic. And, when you're in the second grade, you make your first communion. Mm-hmm. And he passed away from a heart attack. It was just him and I together. So our life changed completely. My mom, was a hardworking, back then in the 50s, women raised the kids and the old man took care of everything else. And so she had to have trial by fire. So I was attending a Catholic school, and then right after that, The coming year, I was put into public school, which was a big change because...
Was that an economic decision?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really kind of, that was an eye-opener because there was times I was the only white kid in class. And it really didn't bother me. I mean, you grow up, obviously, you have to stand up for yourself. Made some very good lifelong friends. One of the kids I grew up with was first president of the Black Panthers in Detroit.
No way. Is he still alive?
Oh, yeah, great. No, as a matter of fact, he's an editor for the Detroit News now. So anyways, after that, Mom went to work in the factory, to support the kids. And so I was pretty much an urban Huckleberry Finn. I had an older brother and sister. My sister's 6 years older. My brother was 5 years older. He was not a very nice person. So I was pretty much on my own to do what I wanted. Going down to the river, freight trains going into the factories and so on and so forth. And so I got a pretty good...
Were you largely unsupervised because your mom was working during the day?
Yeah, she actually would take afternoons and graveyard shifts because you got a shift differential, made a few bucks more doing that. And so, I mean, I was in grade school hitchhiking all over the place. Seriously, I was. As I got older, I actually hitchhiked across the country, and people did that back then. You don't see people put their thumbs out anymore. It was...
Would it be safe to say that you grew up quickly?
I would say so. You had to become streetwise. There was several abandoned factories. Hudson Automobile being the biggest one. It was just right down the street, about a half mile. And that's where all the junkies and the bums would live. So you had to be really careful because they would wait and try to rob you of your lunch money. So, we had names for them sometimes, and if they weren't getting their fix, you could see them put their head in a garbage can.
Yeah.
But so you had to really watch out. I was always industrious. I had a wagon and I would put cleaning supplies and go door to door washing windows at the stores.
Really?
So I really had to watch out to get robbed. It happened more than once, so you became pretty streetwise. But one time I got beat up by, this one junkie and took my money. I was like in the 5th or 6th grade. So the older kids, they made amends for it. They found him in the factory, passed out, took care of business, and he didn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't kill him or anything, but...
He didn't feel good the next morning.
No. But so that was growing up. I stayed in public school through 9th grade.
You were big for your size, for your age.
I had a lot of fights and a lot of trouble. As a matter of fact, in junior high, the counselor said they had a bet that I'd be in prison or dead by the time I was 18.
Positive reinforcement.
But you had to take care of yourself, and if you didn't, you're at the bottom of the food chain. But I made some really good friends, and just learned how to take care of yourself. It wasn't, some of the things I did certainly wouldn't want my kids to know about, but I had to protect myself. I'd been cut up a couple times, but after 9th grade, after junior high, and I was going to be going into a high school, which was Southeastern, which was a very dangerous place for white people. I knew this. So what I did is that I applied back to the same school that I had left, St. Philip's, because it was a grade school through 12, parish school with the nuns and everything. I had my mom's signature, faked. The parish priest knew me.
Yeah.
And he knew that I was a pretty good football player and hockey player because I'd, been in some of the leagues and stuff. So I was able to, 10th through 12th, I actually went back to the same Catholic school. And I paid for my tuition by being a janitor. Where I worked as a janitor, I got $1 off. And that was a bunt of a lot of jokes because a lot of these kids had nice cars and money and everything. And there I was sweeping floors, whatever. So I wasn't a stellar student by any stretch, but I was, I took calculus and math and languages and stuff. But I think I graduated with like a 1.2 average. And my homeroom teacher, this nun, she was not a nice person. They said, well, we think you should be a janitor for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And they were offering me a job.
Yeah.
I went into the Army shortly thereafter. I worked in the factories until, tire factory, until I had to go into the Army. And that was a game changer for me because all of a sudden, Vietnam and everything makes you grow up in different ways. And before I got out of the Army, I started taking classes. I came back stateside in Hawaii and found out that I wasn't the village idiot, that people, tried to peg on me. And so I I started majoring in science and engineering and actually did quite well. It was a shock when people would come and ask me for help, because I didn't have a very good reputation for much of anything.
What kind of a reputation did you have?
Well, trouble and,
Trouble with a capital T.
I always did a lot of reading.
That's one of our shared interests, by the way, Mike.
Even as a child, I was reading, adult books like Silent Spring, Rachel Carson, stuff like that. But for some reason, I just didn't do very well in school. Because maybe I did it. But anyways, so I attended the University of Hawaii for, a year and a half. And then I came here on a skiing holiday and I was on the GI Bill. And I thought, man, I could go to the University of Utah and become a ski bum, which I did. I wasn't ready for the culture shock because my hair was down to my shoulders by then. I had Fu and Manchu mustache. And I was quite an anomaly, so to speak.
I want to stop you right here and tell you this is actually a compliment I want to pay Mike. But if I had to choose, there are two people in my life that I would choose to go with me in a dark alley. And you're one of them, because I know that I would be protected because of your background. But please go on. Yeah.
No, so I wasn't ready for the culture shock. I've never, this is nothing against the theology, but I had a lot of LDS friends in Hawaii, but things were a little bit different here. More, I don't know how to put it, but, it was more of a you, and this was on both sides, us and them type situation. So, but I figured water seeks its own level. I got into the outdoors here, skiing, which I still do, river running, became a guide, doing this and that. And during school, to help ends meet, because the GI Bill didn't really put out a lot of money for you, I worked as a bouncer at biker bars.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And some of them are still around. And so, and I could always diffuse things. I was never a hard ass or anything like that.
Yeah. So how would you diffuse?
Well, you see trouble and you can moderate things like, hey, take a deep breath, Some guys would, some of the bouncers got off on beating people up, and I was never like that. If you can diffuse a situation, why hurt somebody? So, but anyways, I did that, and I actually ended up graduating, go to graduate school as well, and ended up teaching math and science in high school for a couple of years. Wasn't ready for that. I wasn't, the kids using profanity with teachers. And then I got an offer for a job at an aerospace company. They were looking for somebody with an education background. And I was a demolition specialist in the Army. So they were looking for somebody who was a perfect fit. They needed somebody that knew how to handle explosives, teaching. I was a test engineer for about 10 years. And then there was a big layoff and went to British Aerospace for a few more years. And things just kind of went crazy. And a friend of mine says, math and science pretty good. You can crunch numbers. So he asked me to join his insurance agency and got my securities license. It was hard at first, but you had to learn a lot. Navigating things in business is a lot different. And like I said, again, this is nothing against the theology, but I found out that if people ask you where you went on a mission, you better say something, because I had business canceled on me when they found out I wasn't a member of the faith.
Wow.
That's, so what? They had asked me, and I said, well,
tell them that you went on a mission to Vietnam?
No, I just said the Southeast Asian mission. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great. Yeah.
So praise the Lord.
So now, when you said that you were a demolition expert, tell me what that means in your context when you're in the Army in Vietnam.
I was the guy that would, for booby traps, landmines, you had to pick them up and refuse them and stuff like that.
Really?
So getting rid of explosives.
But
there again, that's nothing I choose to talk about. The best advice I got many years ago was put it away and go on into your life.
Until annoying friends ask about it, right?
Well, some people, it got annoying sometimes. And being a veteran was not easy coming back. It was an unpopular war. I actually had some of the professors call me out in front of the class and stuff.
Really?
How many kids you killed today? Well,
oh, geez.
Let me count, and let me get my pitchfork out and count them. But it was not a welcome home.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I never said I came home. I said that I'd come back stateside, because home is a place where you feel comfortable and welcome. None of the veterans felt that way. So I came back stateside.
So now that leads into a question I wanted to ask you, and that is home. What was it like growing up as in your kind of home situation? Because I know you and I know of your heart and I know who you are better than a lot of people.
This is true.
And
I've been able to open it up because I knew it was between you and me in the first most.
but I could tell us a little bit about your growing up, because I think that's one of the things that I really admire about
Home
you.
was not a safe place. Once my dad died, I had an older brother, he's 5 years older, who was really a very, very mean person. And so home was never a safe place. I remember at 3 o'clock when kids were wanting to get out of school, and I was thinking, oh God, I got to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed away from home as much as possible,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my brother was a very cruel, cruel person.
Mm-hmm.
And where he was a lot bigger, a lot older, so I had much of a chance fighting him. But I made my own way through life. I knew that once I went to the Army, I'd never go to Detroit. They said you could have your job back in the factory, but I didn't want that. So I took advantage of the GI Bill and went to school. And it opened up a whole new life for me.
How do you think a rough family background is? What are there positives that came out of that? I think that's part of why you have a great heart.
Well, some people blame the way they are on their own. Well, my dad did this to me, or I didn't have this, and blah, 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 or I was molested, so that's why I have to molest. People make excuses for their behavior. Okay. And what do you call it? Free agency, I think you call it. Don't make excuses for what happened to you as a justification for being bad or mean or hurtful. Well, it was hurtful to me, so, if anything, I developed some, empathy.
I would agree.
Because I know what it's like to be crapped on, in more ways than one. Things were very tight growing up. I got very good at shoplifting clothes.
Yeah.
I did. I'd go and take 2 or 3 pairs of slacks and put them under my knee and then put my other ones up. I'm walking like the Michelin. I got busted a few times. But,
yeah. Imagine being in a Detroit jail is not a place you want to be.
No. I got thrown in Wayne County Jail, which is downtown Detroit. I was only 17, but I didn't have ID. I was drunk.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of boozing and drugs as a kid. My wife would say, you'd be a lot smarter if you didn't do all that. But anyways, so I mouthed off with the cops, and that was not a good thing to do. So
you mouthed off?
Yeah.
Wow, shocking.
That was, no. Well, I looked like Mr. Potato Head when they were done with me. But I got thrown in Wayne County Jail.
Yeah.
And it's a big monolithic place, Wayne County, all Detroit, everything.
Yeah.
And there's guys that have been in there for a long time, murderers and rapists. They were interviewed. There were these 2 guys talking, and this guy was in there for murder. And when I asked him, he says, "Well, why did you kill them all?" And he just says, "Well, they were there. Well, this is not a place for me."
Yeah.
The sad part is that they would erase. There was some kids from the suburbs there that came into Detroit to buy drugs. And they were no more prepared to get thrown into a jail. And, they were physically abused.
Yeah, taken advantage of.
Oh, yeah, really bad. And the jailers wouldn't do anything. The cops would, But for the 3 days I was in, I didn't go to the bathroom or anything. I sat down and minded my own damn business.
Oh, wow. Plus, you're a good-sized guy.
Yeah, I'll tell you, these guys were a lot. They were like Mr. T on steroids, man, I'll tell you. And found out I wasn't very tough and minded my P's and Q's after that. Found out, don't mess with the cops, I'll mess with you.
Yeah. So how do you think that all of these things made you who you are?
As a parent, my kids couldn't get away with a whole heck of a lot,
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate. My son and daughter, they had a great mom. They had their trials and tribulations. My daughter got picked up by the cops on Halloween for going into the old mill.
Yeah.
With some friends.
And that abandoned old
building. And the cop said, just don't do it anymore. I used to do this, and it's really dangerous. So that was her
brush with the law.
Her brush with the law. But I spent a lot of time, maybe because I didn't have anybody to do this with when I was a kid. My kids and I, my daughter, they started river running with me when they were 5 years old. They became very good skiers. My daughter became a very good telemarker backcountry skier and spent some winters up in the Sawtooths, doing research with her college. So, and So the kids couldn't BS me. I had to go away.
Plus, you had street cred.
Yeah,
Something
that's exactly.
I have no street cred.
One time I had custody of my son after the kids after the divorce, and I had gone to Denver for the day and left them, but got really back at late. And so next morning I'm getting in my car, notice that the seat's all the way up. Well, my son, had taken the car out. He was only 15 years old.
Jeez, yeah.
And I said, is there something you need to tell me? And, so don't become a criminal. You're not made for it. I said, and I told him why I was caught. And I explained, I didn't get mad. I just said, listen, this is what it's risk. We could lose our home. You could go and just don't do it again. He was good with that.
Which leads me kind of to, is it 2 grandkids that you have?
Yes.
I want to ask you how you felt when you found out that did you ever think you were going to become a grandpa?
I didn't want to become a father to begin with.
Yeah.
I didn't get married till I was 32, and I was, having a great time. Bachelor, I had, all sorts of things going on. Once the show was born, I'll just hit this briefly. My daughter's first died in childbirth. There was an accident. The doctor wasn't there. And I don't know. I don't want to go into a great deal. Was full term, perfect child. And that was probably one of the most difficult times of my life. And I know with the family and everything, where I just kind of went catatonic. My daughter was living in Pensacola at the time. Her husband's an Air Force pilot. He was teaching down there. And so that was difficult, going down and seeing how they had the room made up for them, my son-in-law being a pilot, we had changing stations, the whole bit. And it took my daughter a while to even go in there. And then when I went to visit a month after the incident. So anyways, my daughter had lived in Europe for a number of years. She was a program manager for Hunter Douglas overseas. And so her and I went over to Europe together, just the two of us. We stayed at one of her friends' place, gave us a condo to stay at in Rotterdam. We went to where my dad was born in Belgium and all these places. And it was cathartic when they weren't planning on trying to have kids or anything. But lo and behold, a couple of weeks after she got back, she got pregnant. And now we have Iris, who just turned 6, and a very willful child.
Yeah, I wonder where she gets that from.
and Anthony just turned 4. It's hard because they always lived away. My son-in-law's only got a year and a half before he can retire. And they're up in Pullman, Washington, not Washington State, where he's teaching. I'm not as close with them as I would like to be. Who knows where they might land after. I think they want to stay in the Pacific Northwest. But, once the kids get a little older, I plan on, doing some river running with the kids as they get old enough, teaching them how to cross-country ski and stuff. My son-in-law lives in Spokane, Washington, and he's kind of a techie up there. Well, this is the first time since my daughter graduated from high school in 2002 where they've lived close to each other.
Do you think you might move up to the Pacific Northwest yourself?
Who, me?
Yeah. No, yeah.
I have friends here. I've been here since 1972. I don't like all the changes here. It's gotten very crowded. I liked it when it was provincial.
I think one of the things is you're a natural storyteller because you got me just kind of, I loved it. But how do you want to use that? And how did you use that with your son and your daughter and with your grandkids?
I never had to come down hard on the kids. I just kind of, it's not that they didn't respect them. They weren't afraid of me. They knew I wouldn't lay into them or anything like that. But if they screwed up, they knew. But, it's like when my son took the car without a driver's license and stuff. I said, listen, I did that. Here's what's at risk. We could lose our home. Don't do it again. He said, I'm sorry, Dad. And there was a few incidents like that. But I never had to lay into, physically. I spanked my son once, and I still have a guilt complex about that. Yeah. It wasn't bad or anything. But the things that I did to survive kind of gave me an insight. There was no money in the house. Like I said, I was shoplifting for clothes. And my mom never asked, those are neat clothes you got. Yeah, well.
Yeah.
She never asked. Don't ask, don't tell. She knew something was going on.
Yeah.
But, and I hung out with older kids who were, in a lot of trouble as well. So breaking into cars, stealing hubcaps. On Fridays, when they would, have these Brinks cars out by the factories, and guys would cash their checks and go across the street to the bars. And We used to call it table money because whatever they had left, they would throw on the table for their wives and kids. But there was guys that, waited for them to, a lot of times they would pass out behind the bars.
And then they'd rob them.
Yeah. And so seeing these things go on, really, that's why, pretty much stay the straight and narrow.
Well, I think that my observation, and I haven't interviewed either of your kids, but my observation is you've been a great father.
We're very
You have a
close.
wonderful relationship with both of them.
Yeah, my daughter just called me this morning. We talk at least both of the kids. I had that head injury. I nearly died from about, 8 or 9 years ago, skiing accident. And so there's been a reversal of father-daughter, father-son situation. So, like, if I'm going to go skiing, I have to call my daughter up and tell her I'm going skiing.
Really?
And if I don't, and if I don't call, or if I'm going biking, and if I don't call, let them know when I got home. The phone will ring at 11 o'clock at night. Are you all right?
Yeah.
Why in the hell wouldn't I?
Yeah.
But no, they come unhinged if I don't check in with them and let them know I'm safe and sound. And
you know that's obviously motivated by love.
oh yeah. Yeah. And now that the kids, it's just a 2-hour flight to Spokane or Pullman. My daughter and son and I are planning a river trip down the Spokane River in May. I still have my gear and everything, and so the three of us are just going to do a river trip with us. There's so many great bicycle trails through eastern Washington and western Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, and all these. So I think my son and I are going to do a 2 or 3 day bike trip.
Fun
Through there, and it's.
I think that talk about wonderful experiences that will happen in the future when your grandkids get older.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, Mike, is that I know that your stories that you've told me over the years not only make me laugh, that they made me cry a couple of times.
Going through it was not fun, believe me.
Yeah. But I think that there's this massive power of your stories.
But yeah. And that's why I really have a difficult time people saying, well, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, or my, blah, 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 or, I hit my wife because my dad hit my mom, or, aberrant, unacceptable behavior and just blaming it on somebody else. But whatever my mom's faults were, I always had to take responsibility for what I did. There was other kids whose parents said, well, it's Mike Deraedt's fault because he's, blah, blah, blah. Never made him take responsibility. But my mom always did. I didn't always like it, obviously.
Yeah. I think that you probably look at things a little differently now in your 70s.
In some respects, some of the things that I took for granted, some bad things that happen in the world that I'm more empathetic with, that, things that go, child abuse, what do they call it, human trafficking, things like that. I take a harder look at maybe than when I was 20 or 30 years old. Now that I've got kids of my own, adult kids and grandkids and stuff, I'm very fortunate that my son-in-law is a very loving father. Obviously, his career's taken him away from the family occasionally and stuff like that. But, the kids are, experiencing things. They're both parents are very scientifically oriented. So, that's how they're raising their kids with all these telescopes and all these other things. But yeah, I wish it would have been nicer to have them closer. No question about that. But what I've done is that I do a FaceTime and read a book to them. I don't give it anything like Ulysses or something like that. But they seem to like it.
You're not reading James Joyce stuff.
No Ayn Rand for those kids. But so, we've been close that way.
Well, I think that I just want you to know that I'm so grateful for our friendship.
Oh, likewise. Like we were laughing earlier, we're the odd couple. There's no question that I can be rough around the edges.
But that's part of what makes you you.
Yeah, although, I'm a professional and I understand that, there are times when I have to stick a coat hanger in my mouth and smile. And no 4-letter words, but yeah, I think we we've been good for each other.
We have. Well, and I'm grateful for that. And I admire the father that you are, and I want you to find more and more and more joy and happiness as a grandpa.
Yeah, one thing I would hope that whoever's watching this finds more tolerance and empathy for what people are going through right now. Hopefully you find more tolerance. Faith is very solidifying, tolerance and such is a lot harder sell than hate, and if you can breed hate, then you've got people.
Well, I think my favorite phrase to describe you is an urban Huck Finn. That's my favorite. But you think about your life, Mike, and it's been lots of highs, lots of lows, lots of in-betweens, and these are powerful stories that you'll be able to share. Well, I want to thank Mike for coming by. Any other things that you want?
This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. I don't know. I'm not used to talking about myself like this, opening up, but I've always opened up with Steve. We've been such good friends. You and I are both fans of Winston Churchill.
We are.
We share books all the time. We share a lot of books. And, I have all these quotes on my desk. I have one of Winston Churchill's that says, if you're going through hell, just keep going.
It's great advice. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Grandpa Channel, and my big thanks to my good friend Mike, Deraedt. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Leave a review, share it with a friend, or better yet, tell your favorite grandpa. We're on a mission to gather 1 million grandpas, storytellers, wisdom keepers, and lovable wild cards. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here.